What's up, game devs? T-Chan here, and welcome to episode 10 of Dev Loadout, where I will chat with today's most experienced game developers 7 days a week. We will learn about their backgrounds, the obstacles they had to overcome, and the tools they use to be effective. And today's featured guest is Grant Shonkwiler. Grant, it is go time. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Awesome. Grant has been in the game industry for more than 15 years. He shipped over 50 plus titles, worked for companies like Epic Games and ID Software. Currently, he is doing production consulting at Shonkwiler. Go ahead and give us a bit about your personal life and how you got started in the game industry, Grant.
Yeah, so I've been making games for a while now. I originally actually got started because of Pokemon. I think it was Red. My buddies and I, we used to swap Game Boy games back and forth because we couldn't, afford to buy all of them. And I had borrowed Pokemon Red from my buddy, and I messed up his game. I ruined it for him, and so we both got really mad about that. And so we just decided to make our own game called Pokemon Killer. And that was the first game I ever worked on. And it was just a design doc and, a little bit of modding on some things that have some screenshots. And we sent it to Sony, and they actually replied, which was great as a kid, and said, thanks, we don't want to get sued. And then from there, I started doing modding, and I did that for 6 years, 7 years. And then decided I wanted to do this as a career, and I went to Full Sail University and got a degree in computer science and game development, and got my first job working on casual touchscreen games for a company called Megatouch Games, and made games there as a programmer and then designer, and then moved up to lead designer, and then moved around the industry as a producer, designer, programmer. I've done just about everything but art. I've done a little bit of audio even, and currently I do production consulting and contract work under my own company called Shonkwiler, as well as some leadership coaching as well. So I've been doing it for a while, and I absolutely love making games, and I love game developers, so it seems to work pretty well.
Well, yeah, based on that, you got a ton of different skill set, but what would you consider your main area of expertise?
Production is my current main area of expertise. I'm a decent programmer, but I've worked with great programmers like John Carmack, and I'm not a good programmer when I compare myself to them. So production is my main thing, and that's what I've been doing for full time for about 6 years now.
So based on production, what is something that we game devs don't know that we should know about production?
Yeah, so production, a lot of times producers people think of producers in two ways, right? Especially if they've never worked with a producer. They think, these are the people who talk on shows, they go and do interviews, or, these are the people that tell people what to do. Well, we do tend to be the people speaking at E3 and stuff, but that's not because we want to. It's because the rest of the team tends to be hard at work on the game still. And so they send the producer out because it's easiest for them to go and do the press interviews all day instead of wearing out the people who are, coding and doing design. And the other thing is that people think, we tell them what to do. And that's not it at all. What a good producer does is they're there to assist you, provide for your needs, make sure you're happy, and understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, and connecting all the people on the project together. And it can even be helpful when it's a solo person making a game, because they can help you with maybe the marketing or the release, or contacts with Apple and stuff like that. So they really are a connector is really the best thing a producer can be thought of. They're there to take care of people and connect to them.
That's interesting, because I honestly did not know what a producer actually does. And yeah, you definitely cleared it up. At first, I thought producer were just helping produce extra projects or produce extra tasks for other people to do. But it sounds like you actually oversees and connect everybody and make sure everybody's, up to date on the tasks at hands.
Yeah, and it's a little bit confusing because producer is cross all entertainment mediums, and it means something different in all of them. I've been a music producer, and it is very different. And being a music producer or film producer or even a stage producer is very different than a game producer, because we're not a lot of times producers are the people who are getting the money and stuff like that in those industries. But in games, it's really you're part of the team and you're making sure the team is going to be successful and enabling them to be successful.
For people who want to teach themselves to be the producer, what resources would you recommend they use?
Yeah, so it's an interesting discipline. I always recommend people to learn at least a little bit about every discipline if they want to be a producer and try and get pretty decent at one of them. So for me, it was programming and design. And that's because you need to be able to speak the language of everyone on the team. So you have to be able to, if an artist comes up to you and says, like, do I have to turn in the high poly or low poly today? I mean, you have to know what that means, right? You don't have to know about NURBS and everything, little detail about modeling. But what you do need to know is the basic language. So I always tell people to kind of get a cursory understanding of everything. As far as like education, I recommend people to, do project management, work on projects that require teams and show me that you can do that you can work with a team, that you can lead a team. There's other weird things too. Like, if you were ever on a team, a sports team, or a clan or a guild, and you organize that. One guy that I'm friends with, he organized a fantasy league, and he put that on his resume. And I actually thought that was really cool because it was like 60 people. And so anything that shows me that you can work with people is great. As far as resources like reading, there's some really good production books. If you go on Amazon, you can find a few. Clinton Keith wrote a really good book on agile game development. Heather Chandler has a really good kind of like intro to production. Clinton and I also wrote a book which is a little more advanced for people who are leading teams. But yeah, there's a lot of different resources. If you kind of just go and look on Amazon, you can kind of start to go down the rabbit hole.
Can someone just jump to be a producer, or they usually require at least some kind of programming skills or artist skills or some kind of background in those other talents before jumping to like the producer role?
You can jump to be a producer. I've hired producers who weren't in the industry, but they had some sort of team leadership skills, right? But a lot of times the traditional path, quote unquote, if you can call it that, the traditional path is through QA. So shipping a few projects in QA and kind of coming in as an associate level producer. But really for me, when I'm looking to hire somebody, I want someone who's good with people. And I can teach you about game development because, like I've been making games for a long time and I still don't know everything. So it's one of those things where it's like, you don't have to know games. If you know people and how to inspire them and motivate them, then you can be a producer.
And the interpersonal skills is a huge plus in the industry. Yeah. What are your key principles for better game development?
So my key principles for better game development are get to fun as fast as possible. Is kind of my like go-to thing. So even when I was in design, this was my number one thing. It was usually I'd build a paper prototype or some sort of quick prototype just to prove out the fun gameplay mechanic. And you really want to get to that fun as fast as possible. As fast as you can get to the fun, then you can start to build the rest of the game around it. That's kind of the first one. And then usually from there, I tell people, build out kind of all the gameplay mechanics in a rough format, so you can see what all is there. So say you get to the core fun, which, in a first-person shooter is jumping around and shooting. But you have this crafting mechanic you want to have and this assembling mechanic you want to have and all that stuff. Well, it's best to kind of build all those features out in a rudimentary way so you can see if they actually mesh in the game to be fun. So yeah, my number one tip is always get to fun as fast as possible. My number two tip is always, it's a job and don't forget that it's a job. Like you can work really hard on it, but don't burn yourself out on it, especially if you're working on a small team. It's really important to take breaks. For me, I solve I do my best problem solving when I'm walking. So either I go out for a walk or something like that. But also in my decompression time. And psychology proves that this is the way every human works, is when we decompress and we take time away from work, it's how our brains process what we're actually working on. So I always tell people, if you can't solve the problem, go for a walk. If you've worked 8 or 9 hours today, maybe call it a night and go do something else that inspires you and makes you happy. The thing about game development, along with all entertainment, is you can be inspired by the weirdest things. I know great game designers who, in their spare time go and photograph volcanoes, and I myself skydive and different things like that can inspire you with different emotions and feelings that you can bring back to making the game great.
Yeah, just taking that little break, even if it's a 10-minute break, that's all you need sometimes to refresh yourself. And skydiving is something on my to-do list, but my wife won't let me do it. I would really love to do it. In the future, I will. I'll be able to pursue
it. Do it.
Yes, I really want to do it.
Take her with you.
No, she won't ever do that for sure. So yeah, creating that fun for the game is definitely a goal. And of course, that's where most of the difficulty lies, is creating some of these games and making it fun for the players from their perspective. Give us a personal experience of your most difficult moment. And it could be like an obstacle or emotion you have to overcome. Be detailed and give us that story.
Yeah. So, I've had a lot of difficult moments, myself personally, people around me, because when you're working really hard, things can get really raw, and people can get raw and their emotions can get raw. I think for me, the hardest thing game development wise that I've had to overcome, and I don't even know if difficult is the right word as far as impossible. And it really has inspired me throughout the rest of my career, which was I had just started working on Rage at id, and I got there to work on Doom, and they came and they said, hey, your multiplayer team is actually going to make the Rage multiplayer. And I was like, okay, cool. And they're sitting there talking to my boss, and they're like, yeah, so all the work that's been done on it is pretty much useless. You can use a little bit of this. And we need it in 4 months. Oh, wow. So we had to build a AAA multiplayer in 4 months. And that was really hard. That was really difficult. There's a lot of interesting stories in there. I physically had to remove people from work because they were having mental breakdowns. I had a guy come back at one point and cut his toe open, but he needed to fix a showstopper. So I was bandaging his foot. I'm Red Cross certified, luckily. So I was bandaging his foot to stop the bleeding while he was fixing a show-stopping crash that had blocked all of QA. So there was a lot of things there that were really difficult, but what it showed me was that if a team is really passionate and they work really hard and they cut scope and they just focus on the fun aspects of the game, they can make something really awesome. And we were all really excited when we got that game out the door. And, reviews kept saying, there's a multiplayer. No one really expected it. And it's super fun. We never expected it to be like Overwatch and last forever, but we just wanted it to be fun. And the craziest part of that story is it was originally 6 players. So it's a car combat multiplayer game if you haven't played it. And there were 6 players. And about 2 weeks before we went gold and shipped the game, we decided that we would just try it with 4 players. And it turns out that it's like at least 50 times more fun with 4 players than 6 players. And so we shipped it that way. And everybody kind of questioned us on the team because it was a very last minute decision. We'd been working on it for 4 months with 6 players. And then we were like, no, 4 players. And, everybody said, wow, this is a lot more interesting because there's only 4 people and it's really intense and tight and really interesting. So that was probably my most difficult challenge because it was nonstop challenge. Every day there was a new challenge. And it was like, going and getting the audio department from the single player team and being like, we need audio. You have 3 days, or we need new UI for the multiplayer. You have a week and a half, so it was really cool to watch a bunch of people come together and work really hard to make something unique and different. And it wasn't just copy paste first person shooter multiplayer. It was something very unique.
I love that your team was really passionate to get the game out the door and to make a great game overall. And I just wish that we could avoid all the, mental breakdowns, or you say a coworker got his toe cut or something like that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And what do you want to make sure game devs take away from experience like this? 'Cause that's crazy.
Well, the first thing is plan properly. So if you know you want to have a multiplayer, make sure that you're working on the multiplayer well in advance. And then be really good at cutting scope. So the original design was huge for the multiplayer, and we kept cutting it down and cutting it down and cutting it down. And I think it was actually more fun because of everything we cut than it would have been if we had put everything in we wanted at the end. And that was, if we had just fought to get to the fun a little bit faster, we probably would have known that, and it would have saved us some headache and some heartache. Really, there's nothing like cutting a feature that someone's worked on for 2, 3, sometimes 4 weeks, and you're like, well, it sucks, or it just doesn't fit in the game, or we don't have art resources to finish it, or we don't have the effects, or we don't have this to finish it. So it's really, it's really important that you keep your scope down, and especially with the way games are made now, just make the good game, and then if people like it and keep paying you money, then you can expand it. There's no reason not to do it that way now. So yeah, those are probably my biggest takeaways from that, is just plan well and then scope always. Like, most people just think scope at the beginning, but you literally cut scope every day.
What would be your greatest investment you made? Like, it could be an investment of money, time, energy, and how did you decide to make that investment?
That's a good question. Probably my biggest investment has just been in myself, in my career. I think the reason that I say that instead of, a financial investment or, investing into a single company or working at a company for a while, is because early on in my career, my whole world revolved around game development, and I was very intentional in that. I wanted to get to a place where it didn't have to be like that. If I ever wanted to have a family or travel or take time off, I could do that. And so when I first started making games, I would work all day, and then I would go home, take a break for a couple hours, and then I would read articles and things online, and practice, programming and design and other things. And then I'd reach out to people who were writing articles and just trying to build my network. And then I lived in Philadelphia at the time, and so I would drive up and down the East Coast to any game development meetups that I could, any IGDA meetings. And I just did this as much as I could. And I went to conferences all around the world, and a lot of times me investing my own money. It wasn't my company sending me, because I wanted to build up a network of people and friends that could help me, make great games, and also better myself. And so I was investing a lot of time and a lot of money into just bettering myself and my career. And it really has, it's paid off, because I've been very fortunate with my last 2 jobs and now with my own business, that they've all been through friends, connections that I have, or people that I've worked with previously who know my skill level and what I've done. And it's reassuring to know I can go start my own business because I have friends who are going to support me and give me contracts, give me jobs. And on top of that, if I ever am like, oh, I just want a job again, they'll just hire me. So, my biggest investment really has been in my own personal growth in game development. And the biggest kind of financial and risk-taking investment I made was in September of last year when I left Epic to take 6 months off. And I just wanted to take time off to reset my brain, and kind of figure out what I wanted to do, where I wanted to work next. And I talked to a bunch of different companies and stuff like that. And then finally decided to start my own business. And so it was really scary, but it was exciting, because I tell people all the time, the weirdest feeling of my life, I've had a job off and on since I was a kid. The weirdest feeling of my life was the morning after I left Epic. It was the first time I had woken up, and I can't even remember how long, that I didn't have to go to work. And I just sat there and was like, okay, this is weird. So, it was, I don't think people realize that investing in yourself, doing the hard work early pays off, but then you have to keep doing it. I'm constantly reading and, practicing my skills in different technology, because you have to stay good.
I'm a big advocate for execution. Like you say, you got to keep doing things if you want to keep improving, and going out to meetups. Like I started going to meetups this year, and that's how I met some of my people that I've been interviewing, and I've been learning a lot more stuff. I've been learning about new events to go to. I've been networking, learning new skills. It's like you have to keep executing and doing things to invest in yourself. Now, the video game business is booming, and, VR is slowly hitting mainstream, and Nintendo Switch is like successful now. What would be one thing you are most excited about today?
The thing I'm most excited about in game development today is really the number of people making games. Now, most people think that that's kind of scary, right? Because it just means more competition. For me, it's the opposite. It means more clients, but it's not really that gets me excited. What gets me excited is new voices entering the industry. People who we haven't seen make games before, specifically individuals telling their story. That really excites me. People telling personal stories through game development, be it literally in an autobiographical sense where you play them, or more of like a figurative, you're playing a character that represents them. That excites me more than anything. I love big AAA blockbuster games. They're awesome, but these small games that indies are making that are telling, emotional stories are what's really pushing our medium to do new and creative things. The big budget people will always make big budget games and push technology, but the indies will always push storytelling and innovation. And that's great. That's amazing. I've played a lot of games made by white dudes, and I'm ready to play games made by other people now. So it's great to see the diversity coming in, but really it's the democratization of game development, with tools like Unreal that are free and, all the other tools that are free to use. It doesn't take a lot of money to get into it. It just takes time and someone to teach. And so that's what I'm most excited about.
Awesome. Don't forget, Game Devs, you can check out GameDevLoadout.com for all the show notes and link. Now we have reached crunch time, where I'll be asking you, Grant, questions at fast pace, and you'll be giving us a ton of valuable information. You ready to crush crunch time and release this show?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. What was holding you back from becoming a game developer?
The thing that was probably holding me back the most from becoming a game developer was just knowing where to learn to become a game developer. So all the things that we just talked about were not available when I was looking to become a game developer, and they are now. So really now, if I were me, all those years ago, I'd be like, wow, there's nothing holding me back. Yeah,
I consider this the greatest time in human history because there's so much things we could do at our house, basically, on the computer. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Well, there's a lot of good advice out there, but when it comes to game development, I want to speak specifically about production. It's, it was told to me by an old boss, and I echo it all the time. And it's people over product over process. And what that means is that, you can work on a great game, but if you destroy your people, then you haven't done a good job as a producer. If you focus on the process more than the fun of the game, then you haven't done service to the players. So what you really have to focus on is the people that you work with. And that's number one importance. And you don't do anything that makes their lives worse. And then you focus on the fun of the game and the excitement of the game and all the other things that go into the game. And then you focus on process, because a lot of times when you talk to people in project management and production, they want to talk about process. And to me, it's just a tool like any other part of game development, and I can drop it if it's going to hinder making the game and just let chaos reign. I haven't found anywhere where that's true, but if that were the case, then I would do it. So yeah, that's probably my number one piece of advice for game development.
Such a great quote. Can you say that quote one more time?
Yeah, it's people over product over process, and it's people over the game, but the game over process.
Yes. Awesome. What's a personal habit that contributes to your success?
For me, it's the downtime. Like I talked about, it's important for me to take downtime and take care of myself. So that includes exercise, taking walks, meditation, eating well, and having fun, doing things that are fun and excite me. I travel a lot. That excites me. That opens up the world to me, and I see new things. So that's probably my number one thing, which is it's just personal health, taking care of myself. I cannot be a successful game developer if if my body hates me and I'm falling asleep and and I feel sick all the time.
Now, this next question is a bit of a doozy, so take your time if you need to. Imagine you woke up the next morning in a brand new world and you knew no one. You still have all the experience and knowledge you currently have today. Your food and shelter is taken care of and you have a laptop. What would you do step by step on the path to become a great game developer?
That's an awesome question. So, I mean, I would wake up and I would figure out what engines are available in this world to make games. And if there wasn't one, then I would figure out programming languages and I would write my own. So I would find an engine or build an engine and I'd make a game. I would just make a game as fast as I could just to learn it and get it out. And then I would start testing it with people and trying to get people that are equally as excited about games as I am. I run the game developers or the game dev drink up with a bunch of people. And part of the reason I do that is to build communities of people making games so that I can be like, hey, I need you. You want to work on this project with me? Hey, I need you. You want to work on this project with me? And that's exactly what I would do. I would find like-minded people and get together to make games with them.
Oh, thank you so much, Grant, for dropping so many value bombs. Go ahead and give game devs a parting piece of guidance and how we can connect with you.
Yeah. So first off, you can connect with me all over the internet. You can find me on Twitter at @G_Shonk. You can find my YouTube under Grant Shonkwiler, and you can find me on LinkedIn as well. And then my website for my work is Shonk Ventures, which is ShonkVentures, Ventures, like adventures. And, my final words of wisdom or advice are just make games. That sounds like blasé advice, but I mean it. Just make games. Find a game that you like. Don't pick something huge. A simple game that you like, and make it. If you've never made a game before, my first game was a version of Pong. That was my first game. I made Pong. Woo! And that was it. And as soon as I made it and played it, I was like, I'm in. This is what I want to do. And I made Minesweeper and I made other games. And that was you have to learn to crawl before you can walk. So just make games. I think that's the most important thing about being a game developer is you make games. Don't just talk about it, but actually do it. And if there's anything holding you back, just email me, gshonk@gmail.com. Email me, and I'll get back to you with as much advice as I can give you and help you figure out how to make games. That's it. Just make games.
You heard him, game devs. Take him on that offer. Email him. Let him know your fears or problems you're having. Let him know. He will help you out. Thank you, Grant, for your time. We appreciate it, and we look forward to your work. Once again, go check them out, game devs. And as always, cheers to more and better gaming. We will catch you next time. Appreciate it. Thank you, game devs, for listening. And remember that knowledge is only potential power. Execution is the game. So equip yourself with the best loadout and take action today. Go check out GameDevLoadout.com for all the resources. You can also subscribe to my email list to get an awesome freebie or contact me for feedback because I would love to hear what you have to say. Until then, join me on the next episode. T-Chan out.